There's something profound that happens when we stop running from what we don't understand and instead turn toward it with curiosity and courage. Chapter 14 of the text in A Course in Miracles speaks of this as the exchange of dark for light, of ignorance for understanding. This isn't just poetic language, it's describing the very heart of our spiritual awakening. Think about this exchange for a moment. We're not talking about forcing ourselves to be positive or pretending everything is fine when it isn't. We're talking about a conscious choice to step out of the shadows that have kept us feeling small and afraid, and into a light that reveals things as they truly are. This journey toward understanding isn't something we take alone, isolated in our own minds. It's a shared awakening, where each step we take toward clarity benefits not just ourselves, but everyone whose life we touch. Every time we choose understanding over assumption, compassion over judgment, or curiosity over fear, we're participating in this sacred exchange. We're trading the familiar darkness of not knowing for the sometimes challenging but ultimately liberating light of truth. And here's what's beautiful about this process. It's available to us in every moment, with every interaction, in every situation that feels confusing or frightening. Let's explore something that might surprise you. Fear doesn't actually exist in the presence of true understanding. When we really comprehend something, when we see it clearly for what it is, it loses all power to frighten us. This isn't about becoming fearless in some superhuman way. It's about recognizing that the things we fear are not inherently scary. They become frightening only because we don't understand them. Think about a time when you were afraid of something, and then you learned more about it. Maybe it was a medical diagnosis that seemed terrifying until you understood what it actually meant. Or a person who intimidated you until you got to know their story. The fear didn't disappear because the situation changed, it dissolved because your understanding expanded. This reveals something profound about the nature of fear itself. Fear is actually a messenger, a signal that we're standing at the edge of our current understanding. It's calling us toward deeper knowledge, greater clarity, more complete truth. When we see fear this way, it transforms from an enemy to be avoided into a teacher pointing us toward our next lesson in love. The Course teaches us that most of our suffering comes not from external circumstances, but from our misunderstanding of what's actually happening. When we don't understand something, our minds tend to fill in the blanks with worst-case scenarios. But understanding shines light into those dark corners of assumption and reveals reality to be far less threatening than our imagination suggested. Here's where it gets tricky though. When we encounter something that frightens us, our natural impulse is often to retreat further into darkness. We avoid, we distract ourselves, we pretend the scary thing doesn't exist. But this only deepens our ignorance and actually increases our fear. We create a vicious cycle where avoidance leads to greater misunderstanding, which leads to more avoidance. I've seen this pattern in my own life and in the lives of people I care about. The very thing we're trying to escape by hiding becomes more powerful in the shadows. The conversation we're avoiding becomes more charged with each day we postpone it. The truth we're not ready to face grows more menacing in our imagination than it would be in reality. Breaking this pattern requires what we might call sacred courage, not the absence of fear, but the willingness to move toward understanding even when we're afraid. It's the recognition that staying in the darkness guarantees continued suffering, while stepping toward the light offers the possibility of freedom. This brings us to one of the most liberating teachings from chapter 14 of the text. What is hidden cannot be shared, and so its value is unknown. The things we keep concealed from others and from ourselves remain sources of fear because they stay separate from love and understanding. Think about the power of secrecy in your life. Not the healthy privacy we all need, but the toxic secrecy that breeds shame and fear. The mistakes we've never admitted, the struggles we face alone, the parts of ourselves we believe are too dark or damaged to be lovable. These hidden places become prisons of fear because they remain untouched by the healing power of understanding and acceptance. Healing happens in the light of honest sharing and open communion. When we bring our shadows into relationship with people who can hold them with love, something miraculous occurs. What seemed too terrible to reveal often turns out to be simply human. What felt like evidence of our fundamental brokenness reveals itself as part of our shared journey toward wholeness. This doesn't mean we need to share everything with everyone. Wisdom and discernment are important, but it does mean that the parts of ourselves we hide from love remain cut off from love's transforming power. And without that transformation, they continue to generate fear. The Course teaches us something revolutionary about value and meaning. They emerge only when our experiences and insights are shared with others. What we keep entirely to ourselves remains isolated and fearful. But when we bring our struggles and discoveries into loving relationship, they transform from sources of shame into gifts of understanding. I think about this principle often when I'm working through something difficult. There's always that moment of choice. Do I handle this alone, or do I invite trusted companions into the process? What I've discovered repeatedly is that the very act of sharing, of bringing my confusion or pain into the light of another's understanding presence, begins the healing before any advice is given or solutions are found. This is the power of joint appreciation that the Course speaks of. When two or more people look together at what once seemed fearful, it loses its power to terrorize. In the safety of genuine relationship, we can examine our fears with curiosity rather than dread. We can ask questions like, what is this feeling trying to tell me? What would it mean to respond with love instead of fear? How might this challenge be serving my growth? Community and connection aren't just nice additions to our spiritual practice. They're essential elements in moving from fear to love. We literally cannot complete this journey alone, because isolation itself is one of fear's most effective tools. This leads us to perhaps the most transformative insight from this teaching. Concealment and love cannot coexist. Whatever we hide from others, we hide from love itself, and this separation breeds fear. The path forward isn't about becoming perfect before we share ourselves. It's about radical transparency, bringing everything into the light where it can be understood, shared, and ultimately transformed through love. Radical transparency sounds scary, and in some ways it is. It requires us to trust that love is stronger than our shame, that understanding is more powerful than our secrets, that the light of truth is gentler than the darkness of concealment. But this trust is not blind faith. It's based on the repeated experience that hiding keeps us suffering, while sharing in love brings healing. As you reflect on these teachings, notice what in your life is calling for this sacred exchange, what darkness is ready to be traded for light, what confusion is asking to be met with understanding. Notice too what you might be keeping hidden that wants to be brought into loving relationship. The invitation is always before us, to step out of the shadows of ignorance and into the light of shared understanding. The beautiful truth is that every time we make this choice, every time we choose transparency over concealment, understanding over fear, sharing over isolation, we contribute to the healing of the whole world. Our individual awakening becomes a gift to everyone whose life we touch. If this message has resonated with you today, consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear these words. May you find the courage to bring your shadows into the light, and may you discover the peace that comes when love dissolves all fear.